Candace Owens destroys Joe Budden in a heated debate on his Patreon. That's right, in a recent episode of Joe Budden's Patreon, Candace Owens and Joe Budden sparred in a war of words. But a lot was revealed, so let's get straight into breaking it down. Candace Owens starts by saying she hates all cities due to over-industrialization. I guess she's saying cities are filled with problematic issues such as overcrowding and the lack of ability to sustain one's lifestyle without electricity. Then Joe asks Candace to clear up the misconceptions about herself, and she immediately starts pointing out that she never said racism didn't exist, and that she only says she was never a slave. She follows up by saying she acknowledges that racism will always exist, but it should only be considered an issue when it stops you from pursuing opportunities. Then Joe starts talking about Kanye and Candace's relationship, and Candace says that Kanye reached out to her after he watched her content. A little later, Candace starts getting into how the Trump presidency may have been more beneficial to the black community in terms of things like economic policies. Now, I just want to be clear in saying this is what Candace is saying. Candace Owens then starts talking about how media is problematic and more concerned with stirring up feelings than sharing facts, and explains how she became a Trump supporter. Joe then takes issue with how Candace Owens said that black Americans have showed more support for Trump since he was indicted. Candace Owens pushes back by saying that it's true, and the facts bear that out. Now, one thing I want to say is that in these types of debates, it's often hard to counteract somebody who's using facts. The thing is, facts are hard to disprove, but how do we know these facts are facts? Like, I'm not saying what Candace Owens is saying wasn't fact, but as you saw with the Kevin Samuels interview on Joe Budden's platform, he was using facts too. But where are you getting those facts from? How are they being framed? Are they accurately representing the intent of what the fact is? And I want to ask you, listeners, how do you combat somebody who's using quote-unquote facts? The facts might indeed be true, but there's also context to the facts. There used to be this theory about men lie, women lie, numbers don't. Well, it was later proven that numbers do indeed lie all the time, and you can make the numbers look a certain way. You can juke the stats. But anyway, Candace Owens then calls out Joe and says that he's being too politically correct, hinting that he'd rather say things that are safe instead of calling out the truth. Things then escalate a bit when Joe says Candace bigs up white people and this is black people. Candace rebuttals by saying Joe is a liar for insinuating that, and points out how she calls out white celebrities on a consistent basis. People like Ariana Grande, Taylor Swift, and many others. She also says her commentary about people of color only gets coverage when it's negative, and that she does say positive things about many people of color. After that, a big part of the show takes place when Candace Owens lays out her issue with the LGBT community. She basically says all of it is crazy and that the concept of non-binary orientations has problematic origins. Once again, this is what Candace said. Joe then counteracts by suggesting that Candace may have an agenda, and once again, Candace Owens says it's just the truth. This is how Candace is essentially disarming Joe as the interviewer. Hey, this is the truth. These are the facts. People are lying to you. This is what I'm delivering. Not saying that's necessarily the case, but that's what she's doing. Joe then calls out Candace Owens for getting too deep into the facts, and Candace just says, once again, the facts are the facts. It seems like I said before, this is how she's disarming Joe. On top of introducing anecdotal references buttressed by her own set of facts, which generally made Joe look uninformed and in over his head. Hence why I said Joe was destroyed in this debate. Candace then pivots to the fat acceptance movement and hints that it may be working with feminism. 2, make people like Lizzo feel comfortable walking around and revealing attire. Joe then asks why Candace Owens associates being overweight with being unhealthy, and Candace says that it's the #1 killer because of things like heart disease. Joe then admonishes Candace for using facts, and Candace hints, once again, the facts are the facts. Joe then says big people are capable of being healthy. After that, Candace Owens really starts to show her disgust for Lizzo twerking half naked at the Laker game. For those of you that don't remember, she garnered a lot of attention where she wore essentially cheekless chaps like Prince did at the VMAs and started twerking at a regular Laker game. They spent a lot of minutes talking about this, and I understand it was really crazy at the time, and nobody seemed to like it except for fans of that movement. Joe then suggests that maybe Candace should consider minding her business, but Candace refutes that by suggesting she's trying to make the world a better place for future generations. Candace then says men need to stop lying and that society is generally weaker when men don't tell the truth. I think Joe then brings up a great point by saying, how will Candace navigate these topics if she ever has a child that subscribes to the theories she finds laughable? For example, things like designating yourself non-binary or just being overweight and being totally fine with that. It is interesting, there's these stories of these hard right-wing Republican governors and pastors who end up being caught in some very dicey situations, and it seems like the things they believe go right out the window. Joe then starts wanting to learn more about Candace Owens' upbringing, and she reveals that she didn't grow up rich, and she had a 2-parent household until she was 20 years old. She also shares that she moved in with her grandfather young to leave the apartment lifestyle. Then the Candace Owens lawsuit gets brought up, basically a moment in her childhood where a group of kids left a racist voicemail on her phone. One of the kids was the son of some governor, and that caused the story to blow up. Candace then says the NAACP never spoke to her directly about the incident, but instead showed up to the school and used her for their publicity. She then says she believes the NAACP race baits. Candace then says the event was traumatic and it turned her into a bad person, as she developed an eating disorder and became an atheist. It's also important to note that an article says Candace was paid $37,500 by the Stanford Board of Education to settle a federal lawsuit which claimed the schools failed to protect her from racial attacks. Then, Candace said she didn't gain $1 from supporting Trump, but Joe says the movement she adopted has led to more opportunities. After that, she gets into how she doesn't support the political stances Jay-Z has taken despite being a big fan of his music. Candace then says you can make a lot of money being a black Democrat. Joe rebuttals saying, hey, the movement Candace has adopted has also been profitable. Joe then asks Candace if she speaks to Kanye, and Candace says she does not speak about her relationship with Kanye because the media tends to spin it. Candace then gets to how media is shaping what is deemed as entertainment, and basically the last part of this interview is her talking about the degradation of society through things like music, Sexy Red, whole culture, money over morals, and the phrasing of reproductive rights. Very good interview. I thought it was entertaining. I thought Joe was overwhelmed by Candace Owens. It kind of felt like I gotta cut him some slack. I think when people have facts ready and you don't have the facts ready yourself to disarm them, it can get a little crazy. I think an example of when someone kind of shut Candace Owens down was when Joe Rogan debated her over climate change.
The vast majority, 87% of scientists, said that human activity is driving global warming, yet only half the American public ascribe to that view. So,
well, what website is
87%, and this is
Scientific American.
Yeah.
Yeah, .com though, like 'cause that means it's making money. I don't trust that. If it was a .org, I would probably take that. But this is just a random website, and I don't trust.
Scientific American is not necessarily a random website.
Essentially, what he did was he brought his own facts and he used the scientificamerican.com, which I guess is a less biased platform than, if he would have pulled up the New York Times. which I'm sure Candace Owens will be like, hey man, that's the New York Times, I don't trust it. So you gotta be ready with the facts, and I think Joe Budden went too conversationalist with the route, and essentially it was entertaining, but as far as a debate, Joe Budden wasn't prepared. Still, it's really hard to prepare for someone like Candace Owens. She's gonna have all the political framing, all of the facts. She's also somebody who has undergone years of schooling, very similar to when Dr. Umar clashed with Ish. You know, you're gonna have this anecdotal evidence, but how do you pivot once factual evidence gets introduced? How will you reframe the facts to suit what's actually going on in America? But like I said, this was a good conversation between the two. I know some people are going to be like, hey, I hate Candace Owens in the comments. Some people are going to be like, I like Candace Owens in the comments. I actually thought she represented herself well. I think some people are going to say that in the comments. But like I said, let me know what you think in the comments. I would love to be educated. I am indifferent towards this interview. I really only checked it out just to be able to recap it. It wasn't like the Dr. Umar interview where I was like super interested to see how Dr. Umar and Ish would get along. With this, I would probably not watch it if I didn't have a YouTube channel where I broke down the Joe Budden podcast. But let me know what you think about the interview. Did you enjoy it? Do you feel like Joe Budden did a good job? Were you even looking at this as a debate? Were you just like, hey, this is a piece of content, I'm gonna watch it. This is not a political debate, Danny. I just want to have fun. And it's interesting when I watch this, I kind of think, you know, this whole humans thing is essentially Joe probably setting up the next stage of his podcasting career. I think one day he'll probably wake up and stop doing the podcast twice a week for 4 hours each time, and then doing 5 Patreon content pieces per week, and start to get into his interviewer bag, probably do the Joe Rogan thing, probably do the Adam 22 thing where he's just booking guests, having them sit down and doing interviews. I think that's what's going to happen one day. It might be a bit easier to run. There's people who just love Joe Budden in every way. You probably don't have to sit down with as many people. You don't have to run a business as crazy. You could run that off to assistants. You don't have to manage personalities like Ish, Flip, and Melissa Ford. Not that they're crazy, but it's just more stuff to do. You also get to introduce yourself to different algorithms when you interview people. Like, I assume this Candace Owens interview is going to end up on YouTube, only because it's a humans episode, and most humans episodes end up on YouTube. But we will see. Alright, y'all, that's my video for today. Please remember to subscribe to Joe Budden's Patreon, because I just gave you a recap of what happened. It's not necessarily exactly what happened. I think I did a good job, but you got to consider the source that it's actually derived from. Alright, like, comment, subscribe. Follow me on Instagram, The Stop TV. Follow me on Twitter, The Stop TV. This is Danny from The Stop. Peace.